This unsettling experience began when I was just 11 years old. I had an older brother who was 16 at the time, and two younger brothers who looked up to us. Our parents had a tradition of going out for dinner every Friday night, leaving us at home with a stack of pizzas and the TV remote. My older brother usually took the lead, and I was happy to let him, reveling in the small thrill of being left in charge. It gave me a sense of responsibility and the freedom to choose the movies we would watch together. That particular Friday night, the weather had turned ominous. Dark clouds rolled across the sky, and the air was thick with the scent of rain. The storm raged outside, with intermittent downpours, distant rumblings of thunder, and flashes of lightning slicing through the darkness. It was the kind of night that felt both cozy and eerie, perfect for settling in with a good movie. As I nestled into the couch, the flickering light of the screen cast playful shadows around the room. My younger brothers, always bursting with energy, decided to take advantage of our parents' absence. They raced into the carport garage, an expansive open space that could comfortably fit 4 cars. It was their sanctuary, a place where they could skateboard, ride bikes, and let loose without worry. The garage felt like our secret playground, especially on nights like this. To the left of the carport was a park, a sprawling green area with no neighbors on that side. We often saw people strolling along the footpath, walking their dogs, or jogging in the evening air, illuminated by the dim glow of the street lamps dotting the area. It was a great place to grow up, filled with the laughter of children and the rustling of leaves. My older brother had jotted down his friend's number before heading out to hang with him, which left me in charge. It was a bittersweet feeling. I enjoyed the freedom, but also felt the weight of responsibility for my younger siblings. As the evening wore on, we settled into our second movie, engrossed in the unfolding story. My brothers were still playing in the garage, their laughter mingling with the sounds of thunder rumbling in the distance. Suddenly, they burst through the door, their faces flushed with panic. "There's a man watching us from the park," they gasped, eyes wide with fear. I wanted to laugh it off, thinking they were just trying to pull a prank on me, but the look in their eyes stopped me cold. Something in their expressions told me this wasn't just a joke. I quickly followed them outside to the carport, peering into the darkness of the park. We stood at the doorway, shrouded in shadow, straining our eyes to see. A flash of lightning illuminated the yard for a brief moment, revealing a figure standing unnaturally still just outside our fence. Panic surged through me as I recognized the stranger. There he was, a man lurking in the shadows, watching us. My heart raced, and a scream escaped my lips, echoing into the stormy night. Without thinking, we bolted back inside, slamming the door behind us and locking it tightly. Adrenaline pumped through our veins as we scrambled to our parents' room, seeking safety. Once there, we grabbed the phone, dragging the cord into the bathroom for added security. My younger brother dialed his friends' houses, his hands trembling. "There's a man in our yard," he cried into the receiver. His friend's voice crackled through, alarmed, as he yelled for his parents to help. I could barely breathe, my mind racing with fear as we waited, counting the seconds that felt like hours. It was only a few minutes before my brother's friends arrived, but it felt like an eternity. They rushed into the houses, calling out to us, their faces painted with concern. The police were soon called, and my brother relayed the situation, explaining what we had seen. I felt a strange mix of comfort and terror as the officers arrived. They conducted a thorough search of our house, the yard, and the surrounding streets, assuring us that everything would be okay. In the midst of the chaos, having my older brother back home felt just as reassuring as the police presence. He was fearless, always looking out for us, and in that moment, I felt grateful for his protective presence. I remember sitting in the living room, clutching my brothers tightly, listening to the sounds of the police searching outside, hoping the stranger would be found. When our parents finally returned, two police cars lit up the driveway, and the concerned faces of neighbors gathered outside, whispering among themselves. This wasn't the age of mobile phones, so I can only imagine the worry that gripped our parents' hearts as they approached the scene. They must have felt their stomachs drop at the sight of the police and the chaos unfolding at home. The officers informed our parents of the situation, explaining that the man was gone and we were safe for now. However, I felt a shiver run down my spine. I never learned if the police ever caught that man. It wasn't until years later, after I moved out and my younger brothers took over my old room, that my dad shared another chilling piece of the story. One night, my younger brother woke my parents in a state of panic, white as a ghost. "A man was standing at my window," he said, his voice trembling. He had been jolted awake by the stranger's voice, asking, "Hey boy, are your parents home?" My parents had chosen not to share this terrifying incident with us at the time, but the timeline fit perfectly with the changes we had made to our windows afterward, installing glass louvers with metal anti-break and bars. That night stayed with me, a haunting memory that lingered long after the storm had passed. The fear of that stranger lurking outside, combined with the sense of vulnerability we felt, left an indelible mark on my childhood. I often wondered what would have happened if my brothers hadn't come to me in their moment of fright, or if I had brushed off their concerns as just another joke. The experience became a cautionary tale in our family, a reminder of how quickly safety can be threatened. It wasn't just the fear of the unknown man that haunted me, it was the realization that danger could be lurking just outside our door, hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Even as I grew older and moved away, the memory of that stormy night remained etched in my mind, a constant reminder to stay vigilant and aware of my surroundings. It was about 12 years ago when I was 16, basking in the intoxicating glow of young love. I had just started seeing my significant other, and despite the constraints imposed by my Catholic upbringing, we found ways to meet under the cover of night. Our rendezvous would often take place at a small park that lay halfway between my house and theirs. Each night, I would wait until the house fell silent, my parents blissfully unaware of my secret excursions. As darkness enveloped the neighborhood, I would quietly slip out of my bedroom window. With a carefully curated playlist in my headphones, I would power walk through the suburbs, a journey of about 3 kilometers to the park. The thrill of sneaking out under the moonlight added an extra layer of excitement, making those moments feel all the more magical. One particular night, after spending hours with my partner, I found myself on my way home around 3 a.m. The rain began to pour, transforming the familiar streets into a glistening canvas of reflections. At that moment, I didn't mind the rain. It felt as if the universe was sharing in my joy. The houses around me stood like silent sentinels, their well-groomed gardens framing the path I had walked countless times before. However, the road home dipped into a small valley, flanked by patches of bushland on either side. It was the Australian bush, with tall, slender trees whose bark hung like sheets of skin, and dense undergrowth that seemed to swallow the light. Streetlights flickered out at the top of the valley, leaving the deepest stretch of the road shrouded in an eerie dimness. I had always felt a slight sense of apprehension as I walked through that valley, an innate wariness that whispered to me about the dangers of wandering alone at night. On that rain-soaked evening, I jogged instead of walked, driven by an unfamiliar urgency that propelled me forward. My hoodie was pulled tight, my headphones securely in place, drowning out the sounds of the world around me. It wasn't until I was nearly at the entrance to the valley that I noticed a figure sitting motionless in the middle of the footpath. The shock sent a jolt of adrenaline through my body, forcing me to slow my pace. My mind raced with frantic thoughts. This is exactly why you shouldn't be out wandering at night. I tried to convince myself that it was merely a passerby enjoying a stroll in the rain, but that notion was quickly dashed as I got closer. The man wore a dark, expansive three-piece suit, and in his hand he clutched a brown leather bag. With each step, a sense of dread washed over me. Why was he sitting there in the rain, seemingly indifferent to the weather? He didn't have an umbrella, and the emptiness of his gaze chilled me to the bone. As I approached, he slowly raised his free hand, signaling for me to stop. In that moment, I was struck by the weight of social norms. Despite every instinct screaming at me to turn and run, I halted. I pulled out an earbud, trying to make sense of the situation. "Do you know a house with a blue front door?" he asked in a soft, almost feminine voice, his face devoid of expression. I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. "I'm not sure. I haven't lived around here in a long time," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. He continued, "I need to find it." My mind raced. Why is he here, alone at this hour? "The main road is that way." I pointed in the direction, trying to keep my tone steady, though fear crept into my chest like a vine choking a tree. As we spoke, my eyes adjusted to the dim light, and I began to notice the disturbing detail. Blood trickling from his nose, running down his face, merging with the rainwater pooling at his feet. A sickening feeling settled in my stomach, the reality of the situation sinking in like a heavy stone. I mumbled an excuse about needing to go, quickly slipping the earbud back in, and I began to jog away. Every ounce of my being screamed to run, to escape, but I forced myself to maintain a steady pace, reminding myself not to run like prey. I felt his gaze boring into me, those dead eyes tracking my every movement as I ascended the hill. I didn't dare look back until I reached the top, rounding the corner and finally allowing myself a breath of relief. He was gone, but the image of that man haunted me, lingering like a specter in my mind. I never did meet my partner in the middle of the night again, nor did I ever encounter the houses with the blue door. The horror of that moment stayed with me, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lie just outside our door. Story 4. The Mountain House Mystery. A few years later, my boss graciously offered my family and me the chance to stay at his mountain house. It wasn't secluded by any means. There were other homes in the area, forming a quaint community that felt cozy yet isolated among the towering trees. The house, built in the 70s, boasted a charming spiral staircase and 2 floors that mirrored each other perfectly. Normally, we boarded our dog when traveling, but due to the last-minute nature of this trip, we brought her along. The second night there started perfectly. The weather was cold and rainy, and we gathered around the fireplace, watching The Office as the kids drifted off to sleep. Shortly after, my wife and I turned off the TV, checked the doors, and climbed into bed. I heard something faint, a rustling noise. Perhaps the wind's playing tricks with the trees outside. But then, I heard a sound unmistakably like footsteps climbing the spiral staircase. Just as my mind registered the noise, our dog erupted into a fit of barking. I'd never heard her make such a ruckus before. Heart racing, I grabbed my pistol and hurried down the stairs, dread pooling in my stomach. As I reached the bottom, I noticed muddy shoe prints leading in and out of the door on the lower floor. Confusion washed over me. I was certain we had locked the door, yet here were the prints, fresh and unmistakable. I scanned the room for any signs of a break-in, but found none. My wife, sensing my unease, immediately called the police. As she spoke with the operator, I heard sirens echoing in the distance. I was relieved until I realized the police had pulled up to the neighbor's house instead of ours. My wife loaded the kids into the car, wanting to get them out of the houses. When we arrived at the neighbor's driveway, I learned they had experienced the same disturbances. They had heard footsteps and their dog had gone wild, just like ours. Both families had locked their doors, yet there were no signs of forced entry. With anxiety bubbling beneath the surface, we filed a statement with the police, but I felt uneasy about staying in that house. It was late around 11 p.m. when I reluctantly called my boss to let him know we were heading to a hotel instead. The unsettling feeling in my gut had grown unbearable, and I was convinced we had to leave. Days later, I found myself Googling the area out of curiosity. One article caught my eye, a headline that read, "Man arrested after alleged break-in and assault." My heart raced as I scanned the details. The suspect was described as being 6'2" and 275 pounds. My gut told me this might be the same man who had invaded our sense of safety, but I held on to a thread of hope that it wasn't. The mountains became a place of unease for us after that. We still loved the beauty of the area, but we opted for hotels and cabins with better security. Each trip, we were haunted by the thought of what might have lurked in the shadows, a reminder that safety can be just an illusion. Story 5. The unsettling motel stay. It feels cliché to start this off by saying it was a dark and stormy night, so let's just say the weather was terrible. My two friends and I were en route to a convention in Chicago, a trip we had made every year for the past 4 years. Despite warnings from the Weather Channel about severe weather, we were determined to go. The drive began smoothly, with rain and humidity enveloping us in the typical Midwest summer storm. As the night wore on, the storms escalated, reducing visibility to mere lines on the road. At one point, Chris, sitting in the passenger seat, swore he saw a tornado in the cornfield nearby. We finally pulled under a bridge, waiting for the downpour to lessen enough to continue our journey. After about 45 minutes of sitting in the car, the rain finally let up. The remaining drive was accompanied by a disconcerting fog that settled in after the storm, creating an eerie atmosphere. With hardly any other cars on the road, we felt increasingly isolated. We arrived at our motel around 2 a.m., weary from the journey. Being poor college kids, we never stayed at the convention hotel. Instead, we always opted for this cheap motel a short drive away. It was 3 stories tall, with no interior hallways. All the rooms were accessed from outside. Upon checking in, we found the lobby dimly lit, the air thick with a musty odor. The receptionist was an older woman with sharp eyes, casting suspicious glances as we made our way to our room. We attempted to brush off the discomfort and headed to our room on the 2nd floor, nervously joking about the bad vibes we were getting. The room was a standard setup, 2 double beds, a small bathroom, and a TV perched atop a worn dresser. After taking a moment to decompress, we all agreed to grab a late-night snack. As we left our room, we noticed an unsettling figure loitering in the parking lot. "Is he waiting for someone?" Chris whispered. We avoided eye contact as we walked past him, heading to the vending machine in the lobby. The tension was palpable. We each grabbed a snack, but on our way back, the man had moved. He was now standing right outside our room, his back to us. "Dude, that's so creepy," I murmured, feeling the hairs on my arms stand on end. "What do we do?" Jake asked, panic creeping into his voice. We exchanged nervous glances, unsure of our next move. Just as we contemplated returning to the lobby, the man turned around, his face partially obscured by shadows. "Hey, you guys," he called out, his voice gravelly and strained. "You're in room 205, right?" "Yeah," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think I left something in there. Mind if I grab it?" I felt a surge of adrenaline. "Oh, we're just about to go in," I stammered, moving closer to the door. "Ah, come on. It's no big deal. I'll be quick," he insisted, taking a step closer. In that moment, our instincts kicked in. I turned to Jake and Chris, and we bolted into our room, slamming the door behind us. "What the hell is going on?" Chris gasped, locking the door. We huddled near the window, peering out to see if the man had followed us. He stood in the parking lot for what felt like an eternity, watching us, then turned and walked away into the darkness. We immediately called the front desk, but the receptionist merely shrugged. "He's been coming and going for weeks. Just ignore him." Not satisfied, we decided to pack our things and leave. As we made our way down the stairs, we spotted the man again, loitering near a car parked at the back of the lot. He turned his head slightly, catching our eye, and an unsettling grin spread across his face. We hurried past him, adrenaline pumping, and fled to our car. With shaky hands, I started the engine and sped away, the night closing in around us like a suffocating blanket. Those experiences became etched into our memories, haunting reminders of how quickly comfort can morph into unease. Even as we reminisce about those nights, a chill runs down my spine, a testament to the shadows that linger just out of sight.